All right, we are going to collect data for our ionic compound dropper lab today. And so I've collected a variety of ionic compounds, and what I've done is I have dissolved them in water. So they're a little easier to work with and they react a little more easily when dissolved in water. So we know all ionic compounds are solids at room temperature, and some of them do dissolve in water, and so these are all compounds that form aqueous solutions. And then those solutions I've placed into these little dropper pipettes, and I will be using those to just react a couple of drops of each solution for each reaction. So it saves material, right? And it's safe, especially when we're using things that might not be so good for us. So I am going to begin by placing the solution that's listed at the top of the column, a couple of drops of each of those solutions on the X all the way down the column. So our solutions are silver nitrate, lead 2 nitrate, copper 2 sulfate, this one is magnesium sulfate, and then iron 3 chloride. So let me do that and I'll be back. Okay, so each X has a couple of drops of the solution at the top of the column. All of the solutions are clear, that means they're transparent, right? I can't see any particles floating in them. And 3 of them are colorless, and then our copper, of course, is a characteristic blue color that we associate with copper ions, and our iron 3 chloride has a little bit of an orange color to it. All right, next what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the solution of the compound that's listed on the side and add a couple of drops of that solution to the liquid that's already in the square. Right, and you notice there's a little X on each square, and one of the reasons that X is there is to provide a little bit of contrast. So we will know that a reaction has occurred if we see that X sort of being blotted out in any way. So the solution going from clear to opaque in some way. Right? When that happens, we are seeing the formation of a precipitate, and that is a solid that's forming in that solution, and that solid is forming because it's making a new ionic compound. So that's what we're going to be looking for here, any precipitates that we can see forming. And then we will be writing in the first, at the top of our box for each, on our corresponding data table, what we see. So precipitate's kind of a long word to write, so we can use the abbreviation PPT when we see that. All right, so going across first is iron 3 chloride, and I'll put a couple of drops of iron 3 chloride there. And yeah, absolutely, that is a reaction. So we do see the formation of a precipitate there. It's a white precipitate, I would say. There's a little bit of orange, I think, tinge to it from the iron solution that's left over. The precipitate itself is white. So you can write white PPT in the first box. And for the second box, it does not appear at this point that anything is happening. However, sometimes reactions are slow, so I'm not going to write anything there, and I'm going to work ahead, and then I'll come back and take a look at that again. So not all reactions happen immediately. Okay, row 2, this time we're going to be reacting Ki. Notice I hold the pipette vertically and not at an angle, and I hold it above the solutions, right, above the surface, and that's so I don't contaminate what's in the pipette. All right, there we definitely see another precipitate formed. This one's a very, very light yellow. So you can put very light yellow PPT for that observation. Oh, and in the second box, wow, that was dramatic. That is a bright yellow PPT, right? Sunny yellow PPT. Okay, row 3. We'll be adding drops of sodium hydroxide, NaOH. This is a caustic chemical, so I have to be careful not to get that on my hands. I would wash my hands right away if I did. Oh, wow, look at that. Definite precipitate there, a muddy brown precipitate. Box 2. Okay, for that, we have a pearly white precipitate. That one's kind of pretty. I don't know if you can see. Third box. Okay. This one might be hard for you to see, but I can definitely tell that there's some wisps of solid forming in there. And that's a medium blue color, I would say. So medium blue precipitate. In our fourth box with the magnesium sulfate. Okay, again, only a little bit of precipitate form, but I can definitely see solid floating around there. And that's a white precipitate. So white precipitate for magnesium sulfate. Okay, and then finally with the iron 3 chloride, yeah, that's a nice orangey brown precipitate. Yeah. All right. Next row, sodium carbonate is what we are mixing in. So there we go. Oh, another white precipitate. So we're getting quite a few white precipitates here. Box 2. Again, white precipitate. Box 3. Wow, this is another one that's kind of slight, so let's give that a few minutes and we'll come back and fill that in. Okay, box 4. There's a little bit of a white precipitate in there. I can definitely tell that that I'm having a harder time seeing through the liquid. Oh, going back to the previous box, yeah, I can see again some wispy precipitate forming. This is more of a light blue color. Where the one above, medium blue, this is more of a light blue color. And then our final reaction mixture, okay, another precipitate has formed, right? So we're making lots of new ionic compounds. That's more of an orange color, so an orange PPT. And then our final row, we'll be adding sodium phosphate. Ah, that's pretty. That's sort of a lemony yellow precipitate. So box 1, lemony yellow PPT. Okay. Box 2, again, a white precipitate there. Okay, and in box 3 with the copper 2 sulfate, another precipitate. This time it looks like it's a very light blue precipitate. Okay, box 4, that one does not appear to have a precipitate at this point. We'll give it a few minutes just to be sure. And box 5. Okay, yep, that's a precipitate as well. And that's kind of hard to tell. Maybe a very light brown color, maybe a tan precipitate is what you could call it. All right, going back and looking at the one that we skipped, I really don't see any reaction there. So in our first row, second box, let's write NVR, and that'll stand for no visible reaction. NVR, so in this box that we skipped before. And then finally, our very last box, there may be the smallest amount of precipitate there. It does look like it's a little harder to see through where the liquid is, so the X is being blotted out, and it's a white color as well. So we'll say that's a yes, even though it's not very much, there still is a reaction. So a white precipitate there. Okay, so in every single instance where we got a precipitate, we made a new ionic compound, right? So what your job is now is to write the names and the formulas. I guess in box or line B, you'll be writing the formula for the new ionic compound that formed. And in line C, you'll be writing the name for the new ionic compound that formed. Now, there's some help here. So if there was a precipitate, what the little ions in parentheses mean is that those are the two ions that are reacting. So this positive came together with this negative to make that precipitate, right? So our formula for that compound would be AgCl. Silver has a +1 charge and Cl has a -1 charge. And the name for that compound, of course, would be silver chloride. So that's what you'll be doing for the remaining boxes. And then you can also answer the questions on the other side of your paper. Okay, to clean this up, I'm going to absorb all of that liquid and precipitate with paper towel and put that into the trash so it doesn't go down into our sanitary sewers, because some of those ions are hard to remove. And then I will wash my hands I'll wipe off the sheet with a damp paper towel and wash my hands really thoroughly with soap and water so I don't accidentally take anything home with me. All right, so there you go. Have a good day.